Good morning. Welcome. My name is Jeff Greenburg. I am a senior advisor for election administration with the Committee of 70, and I am honored to welcome our special guest today, Secretary of the Commonwealth, Al Schmidt. We're going to have a really interesting and unique conversation today about a special group of folks who are, as in our opinion, I think we agree on this, are the most critical to the operations of our democracy here in Pennsylvania and our elections in Pennsylvania. We're going to talk a little bit about how these folks, our poll workers, can get on the ballot. Pennsylvania is really a unicorn in that aspect, in that our poll workers, some of our positions actually have to run, just like other elected officials in Pennsylvania. And we will hopefully provide some information to help those folks. Time's running out to get on the May 20th primary ballot to be an elected poll worker. So elections are a fundamental part of our democracy. They happen in Pennsylvania thanks in part to 45,000 poll workers who staff more than 9,000 polling locations every election day. That's twice a year. And three of these positions, many of them are elected. So these folks have to circulate petitions and do things just like other elected officials. And today, the Secretary and I will be discussing how Pennsylvania voters can run to be elected to those spots at their local precinct. Welcome, Secretary.
No, thank you for having me, Jeff. And just to start, I just want to say I really appreciate the work that the Committee of 70 does and that you do and your experience as a former county election director as well. I had the opportunity for a very brief time to work with the Committee of 70 between being a county commissioner in Philadelphia and joining the Shapiro administration at the Pennsylvania Department of State. So it's a real pleasure to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's talk about these positions. So can you talk a little bit about the jobs? Who are our poll workers and what do they do?
Right. When you walk in on election day to your local precinct, whether it's just down the street or a short drive away, and you see the table of people sitting there to help you cast your vote and make sure your voice is heard, they each have a specific position. And as you mentioned, Pennsylvania is sort of unique in a lot of ways because three of those five positions are elected. Those positions are the judge of elections, who's really the person who is in charge on election day at that polling place. There is something called a majority and minority inspector, and that really means someone elected essentially by the majority party and by the minority party. And then there are other appointed positions, the clerk, who is recording voters who come through in something called a clerk book, and also the machine operator who will assist you with the voting process as well. Those are the people on election day, and you know it and I know it, who are the most important people in elections. It's not the Secretary of State. It's not a county election director or a county commissioner. It's really your friends and neighbors, people from your neighborhood who are paid very little. It's essentially like a volunteer position to work from beginning to end, about 14 hours, to make sure that you can cast your vote on election day.
And just to add, just to talk about the importance of this, and you reference the idea that the secretary or an election director aren't the most important people. I can tell you in my career as an election director, the most difficult part of my job was filling these positions, was trying to recruit folks to either run or agree to accept appointments. And so it is really critical, this conversation that we're having today, and to try to encourage people to run. I like to say we had the old, World War II Uncle Sam needs you. I think we could start an Uncle Al needs you in Pennsylvania and maybe help to get a few more folks.
Well, one thing is certainly true, and that is, I think a lot of people don't know that these positions are elected positions. You serve a 4-year term, just like the President of the United States, just like the governor or any other number of elected officials. But to get on the ballot, to run, to win, and get elected to one of those positions, you need to do just a couple things. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. It's really not. Like any other candidate to appear on the ballot, you have to circulate a nomination petition, which means you have to get a certain number of signatures from people in your neighborhood or in your precinct to sign it for you to appear on the ballot. To be on the ballot for judge of elections, it requires 10 signatures. You can be one of them. People living with you, if they're eligible and registered to vote, can be others. Person across the street that maybe you shovel their driveway, or other neighbors that you have can also sign that petition. So to be judge of elections, it's 10. To run for the other two positions, majority and minority inspector, it's 5. And again, you can be one of those signers. So it's not a heavy lift, but in order to do it, you really need to reach out to your county to request a copy of the nomination petition. And they can, in some counties, send it to you electronically, like Philadelphia. We made that change while I was there, so it could just be emailed, printed out, double-sided on a, I think, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then you just fill it out at the top. It's just a couple of lines, like your name, your address, a couple of things like that. And then you get, whether it's 10 signatures for judge of elections or 5 for an inspector of elections, and then submit that to your county by March 11th so that your name can be put on the ballot.
And one of the things that we always recommended was for the candidates to get more than the minimum number required in the event that maybe 1 or 2 or more of the signatures aren't good for some reason. So you always want to give yourself a cushion, whatever you're comfortable with, before you submit that petition.
That's absolutely right. There's regardless of what office you're running for, that number is the minimum number of signatures that are required. It's always good to have a few extra in case the neighbor across the street who signed your petition isn't in fact registered to vote, or they thought they were but they weren't, or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's really not a heavy lift to get on the ballot for these positions. It's reaching out to your county, requesting the petition that you need, getting those 10 signatures or 5 signatures, and returning it to your Board of Elections by March 11th.
So we always
and
talk
I have to
about,
say, Jeff, it's a really, and I'm sure people who have done this have experienced it. I don't know how else to describe it in a more articulate way, but it's a really cool feeling going in to vote on election day and seeing your name on the ballot. You will appear on the ballot with every other candidate who's running for any other office when you run for one of these positions. It's gratifying in that respect, but the most gratifying aspect of it, of course, is exercising your civic responsibility and making sure that you are making it possible for your neighbors to cast their vote and make their voice heard.
absolutely. So we talk about these positions often as being volunteer, and in a sense, people have to volunteer to maybe accept an appointment or to want to circulate a petition to get their name on the ballot. But we know that they do get compensated. And can you talk a little bit about maybe that compensation, as well as what would the time commitment somebody might expect to have to give in order to fill these positions?
That's a great question. So it varies a bit county by county. It's really up to the county how much they pay all of their election workers. So in one county like Philadelphia, it might be $200 for the day. In another county, it might be $150 or something else like that. Most counties also pay a sort of bonus if you've attended training. All counties in Pennsylvania offer training in advance of Election Day, whether it's for an hour or 2. You would attend that training, and as a result of attending that training, you receive an additional sort of pay bonus for doing so, to make sure that you know the rules and all the rest. The commitment In addition to the training, if you choose to do it, and many counties, I know Philadelphia and others, offer that training online, so you can actually do it from the comfort of your own home. But on election day, the polls are open in Pennsylvania from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So they're open for 13 hours. You have to arrive a little bit early and stay a little bit after the polls close. So that's why I usually say it's about a 14-hour commitment. You're showing up about a half an hour early. After the polls close, you're there for maybe another half an hour closing things down. But that's what you should expect for the day. And you're there serving with 5 other people. So if somebody has to, use the restroom or go out and grab lunch or something like that, that election board is able to work that out, in my experience, just to make sure that it's always operating. So if a voter walks in the door, they can cast their vote.
And just to put a fine point on the time commitment for the year, we used to tell our poll workers in Mercer County that they should expect about 35 total hours. So that's not a lot of time. So between the 2 elections and the 2 trainings, about 35, and that could again vary depending on the county, but it's not a lot of time. Hopefully for the what you are giving back to your community.
That's right, and that's a good way to think of it. In the course of a year, it's about 35 hours, and it's really meaningful. I mean, if you care about voter accessibility, if you care about election integrity, if you care about making sure that that you and your neighbors can cast their vote and, as I said, make their voice heard, it's a very gratifying thing to do.
Secretary, how can people learn more about running for one of these positions?
There's a couple of options. One is to go to the Pennsylvania Department of State's website, vote.pa.gov, or you could go to the Committee of 70's website, 70.org, to learn a little bit more about what's involved. Again, it's really not complicated. I know this might seem new to a lot of people and could seem more complicated than it really is, but it doesn't take much time and is well worth doing.
And this is my selfish face on now, but I would also strongly encourage people to contact their county election office as well, which are typically going to be the best resource or the most direct resource, and to be able to answer specific questions about how, where, and when to pick up your nomination packet, and when the close of business will be on Tuesday, because that can vary by county as well. So they're always a primary resource.
That's exactly right. All of this, none of this will go through the Pennsylvania Department of State or the Committee of 70 or anyone else. It's really your county election office, your Board of Elections office that can provide you with the paperwork that you need to complete, which is very simple. And then once you've completed it and get the signatures required, you submit it to them. Again, it's not far off, but there's still plenty of time, which is March 11th.
Thank you. Any final thoughts, Secretary, or reminders for the folks out there?
No, I just want to say that our entire system of government, our entire representative democracy depends on you and your friends and your neighbors and the people who are willing to step up to serve in this very important position to make sure that when voters come to the polls, they vote in person on election day, they can cast their vote and have it counted.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a privilege to spend this time with you today and to present this information. So we are extremely grateful for your time here at the Committee of 70 and for all that you do for the voters of Pennsylvania.
No, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Committee of 70.
Everyone have a great day.